Alrighty. So today we are joined by Notional Finance, specifically Teddy Woodward of Notional Finance. Notional is a very old protocol on Ethereum. It's one of the oldest lending protocols around. And they have recently come out with their V3 product. The V3 product originally launched on Arbitrum, where I personally have quite a bit of my rETH sitting. And we will soon be talking about how Notional is entering mainnet phase. So before we get into all those juicy details, how are you doing, Teddy? And can you tell us a little about your own background and Notional Finance?
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for having me in the Discord here. I appreciate you hosting us. And thanks for thanks for the vote of confidence with Notional V3 on Arbitrum, Jasper.
Yeah, of course.
Um, yeah. Uh, okay, yeah. So I can say like a little bit about myself and Notional. Like you said, Notional's been actually around for a long time. We started Notional in uh, January of 2020. So this was before DeFi summer. Um, and prior to that, I was kind of had the idea for Notional based on what I did before I got into crypto. So I used to be a interest rate swap trader. And before I started Notional, I was really interested in DeFi, and DeFi was very basic at the time. I think there were really only like three protocols. There's like Compound and DYDX and Maker and Uniswap. And I thought DeFi was really cool, and I thought kind of the next natural sort of step in the evolution of DeFi was going to be fixed rate lending and borrowing. And so that's why we started Notional. So originally, when we started Notional, it was basically like the idea was compound, but with fixed rates for lenders and borrowers. Um, and so that was kind of the original. We launched Notional V1 in October of 2020, and then Notional V2 in November of 2021. But the idea has uh, seen a ton of evolution over the life of the protocol, because basically what we found was like there wasn't a whole lot of demand for our original idea, which was just sort of compound with fixed rates. So the UX for the fixed rates was really bad. And then just in general, like there wasn't a huge amount of demand, because I think, primarily when people borrow in crypto, if they're borrowing stable coins against, ETH or wrapped Bitcoin collateral, or rETH, they're usually trying to like take those stable coins and do something risky with them, like go, levered long some other crypto tokens or go yield farming. And so what we found was that like realistically, like people didn't care that much about getting that fixed rate. Maybe some people thought it was better, and we have users on Notional V2, but it wasn't better enough to to make people sort of like use a different platform than they were used to and go through all the like bad UX of the original sort of versions of Notional. And so basically what we did over the last few years is we really adapted our original model and come out with Notional V3. So Notional V3 is a big improvement, and I think it is it's a very advanced lending protocol. So we still have fixed rates, but the UX is a lot better because we've enabled also variable rates. So on Notional, you can borrow at variable or fixed, and if you borrow it fixed, once your fixed rate matures, it auto converts into a variable rate, which like really like improves the UX of borrowing at a fixed rate versus Notional V2. So we have variable and fixed rates. And we also have leveraged yield strategies. So that's kind of the focus for Notional V3. So with a leveraged yield strategy, what you're doing is you are depositing some margin into Notional, borrowing from Notional at a variable or a fixed rate, and then depositing the borrowed capital plus your initial margin into a yield strategy that's going to earn you yield. And the idea here is that uh, using these leverage yield strategies, you can earn very high yields. So that's kind of like been our focus, and a lot of the opportunities that we'll have for our rETH holders on Notional V3 mainnet are just going to be great opportunities for people to earn yield on their rETH. Um,
Yeah, that's
yeah, so I can, yeah, go ahead.
very, very cool. Lots to unpack there. Starting with some of the improvements made to the fixed system. So, in previous iterations, when you had a fixed yield loan, it would, I'm guessing, either close on you or you would have to act on it when the fixed period of time ended. But now, the idea is it just switches over to a variable rate, which is a way cleaner UX.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So basically, like Notional V2, what would happen is you had to roll it when you had a fixed rate come to maturity. You had to either roll it forward prior to maturity, so you had to extend it another 3 months, or if you didn't, it would be auto rolled for you at like a penalty interest rate. It would be auto rolled in another 3 months, and basically like uh, this just did not work for people realistically. Like some people thought this was okay, but like especially for larger borrowers, this just like did not work. Because it's like maybe you're borrowing at a fixed rate at 4% now, but then when you get rolled over, you're forced to fix at like a really high, maybe like you were forced to fix at like 8 or 9%.
Oof, yeah.
And yeah, and it was just sort of like, we had like big borrowers, and they wanted to stay on Notional, but like I couldn't like honestly say that it was like a good that they should.
Right.
Um, and yeah, so the changes in Notional V3 make this UX so much better, right? So it's like at the end of your fixed rate, you just auto convert into a variable rate. There's no penalty, nothing, no action needed from you. You can then at that point decide if you want to refix your rate or not. Yeah, it's just much cleaner.
And it's pretty impactful for what we're about to get into, which is liquid staking, because the interest rate is very important when you're looking at leverage LSTs, because the APR on the LST is generally pretty flat and in a downward trajectory. So if you get caught out in a spike and you get locked in at 8 or 9%, you're probably looking at a period of consistent 4 to 5% loss. So having
Yes,
that switch into variable means, oh no, you can just exit.
yes, exactly. And just to pick up on something you sort of touched on there, a cool thing about Notional, and like what we found is like actually a better use case for fixed rates, um, is really like in these leveraged yield strategies for basically the reason you just said. So like let's take the example of the sort of leveraged staking trade. So I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar. This is kind of popularized on Aave, where you take your rETH, put it as collateral on Aave, borrow ETH against that, convert that to rETH, and sort of loop that trade, right? And you can earn leveraged APY if the borrow rate you're paying on your ETH is less than what you're earning on your rETH, right? Um, so now the thing is with that, that's actually uh, because the difference between the borrow rate and the LSD yield is pretty small. you're actually taking a lot of risk there, because if the borrow rate spikes, you could be looking at like all of a sudden, I was earning 7 or 8% total APY, and now after the borrow rate spikes, my APY is like minus 40%, right? Because the LSD yield hasn't changed, but the rate you're borrowing ETH has like increased massively. And so that's like a real risk. The nice thing about fixed rates on Notional is it allows you to sort of mitigate that risk, because you can get a fixed rate on your leverage. So, you could borrow ETH at 3%, fix it, and be sure that your borrow rate is never going to spike. And so then your only risk for this leveraged yield strategy is the yield you're getting on the other side. So that's actually, I think, quite a nice case, or like a nice use case for fixed rates. And we've seen a lot of take up um, uh, on fixed rates on Notional V3 for people who are using the leverage yield strategies. I think for that reason. Um, so that's a pretty cool thing. Um,
I will say personally, that is essentially why I am doing the same thing.
nice. Cool. Yeah. So I guess I don't know. I can talk about what we're doing on V3
Yeah,
with rETH. Yeah.
let's get into what the available options are as an rETH holder for V3, and perhaps let's start with how Arbitrum has gone, and before we jump into mainnet.
Yeah, sure. So Arbitrum has done, I think, really well. So we launched there in November, and then just a few months ago, we got an Arbitrum STIP grant, which has really helped us bootstrap liquidity. So we went in sort of mid January. I think we went from something like $2 million in TVL, all the way up to currently, I think we're around 17 or 18. So we massively increased our TVL, and we've seen, honestly, just like a lot of usage of our leverage yield strategies. So I think currently, right now, we have like $55 million in debt, and the vast majority of that, I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but the vast majority of that debt is used in leverage yield strategies. So some people are borrowing on Notional, like you would borrow on a regular lending market, right? So they're putting in rETH collateral and borrowing USDC against that, and then going to do something with that USDC. Some people are doing that, but really the vast majority are using Notional to get access to these leverage yield strategies. So I think that's been like a really big hit. Yeah, and so we've gotten a lot of usage on that. That's been great for the protocol. Like helps us, get new users and also generate a lot of revenue. So yeah, so things have been going great on Arbitrum. Yeah.
Yeah, fully agree. The STIP program has, been a huge benefit to all the protocols building on Arbitrum, and as a source of financing for getting that initial snowball down the hill. And I think we're seeing that play out well with Notional. Uh,
Yeah.
there are roughly two ways, if I remember correctly, for leveraging on Notional. I believe one of them is geo restricted at the time being, and that is like the simple click and deploy leverage staking. I believe that is unavailable to U.S. residents at the moment. However,
That's
providing
yes.
collateral and sort of doing it the slow, manual, lower leverage way is somewhat available, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, that's correct, right? Unfortunately, our leverage products are not uh, open to U.S. users. We built this really nice leverage UI that does all this stuff in one click. And unfortunately, we can't offer that to U.S. users. So I don't know. Hopefully that changes. But for now, if you are in the U.S., you can still put on these leverage strategies, but you have to like kind of do it the old-fashioned way, where it takes multiple transactions, right? So you deposit liquidity, you borrow against that, you deposit more liquidity, and you sort of loop over a series of transactions.
Yeah, and given that this has all been done on Arbitrum so far, it's been dirt cheap to do that, even manually, which is how I've
Yes.
personally entered.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so let's now talk about what strategies will be available on mainnet, and also what is the note token.
Sure. Yeah, so first I can talk about like the rETH strategies that we'll have. So I think I'll go from least degenerate to most degenerate. So that's yeah, I'll order them that way. So the kind of the simplest thing you can do is just deposit your rETH and provide liquidity to Notional's lending markets. Um, and if you do that, we will incentivize with our governance tokens. So we're allocating, I believe it's 500,000 note to provide incentives for our ETH holders to deposit and provide liquidity. And when you do that, you are going to be earning the note incentives in addition to any interest generated on Notional for rETH. So anytime someone's borrowing rETH, they're going to be paying you interest. Um, yeah, so that's kind of the simplest strategy. And if you want to get kind of one step more complex and one step more degen, what you can do is I think what you've been doing, Jasper. So you can provide liquidity with your rETH. You can then borrow more rETH on Notional and provide more liquidity. And this helps you sort of like lever up, maximize your yield, and earn more note incentives in the process. So we call this strategy leveraged liquidity, and we've built a really nice UI for it. Again, unfortunately, that UI is not available to US users, but you can sort of recreate this trade manually. Um, yeah, so that's called leverage liquidity, and that's been a really popular trade on Notional V3 on Arbitrum. Again, because it allows you to sort of like lever up on this incentivized opportunity and maximize your yield. So that's kind of step two, and then step three is I think like going to be a really interesting opportunity, and I'm really excited about it. Um, so basically, with this third opportunity, what you're going to be able to do is use an rETH leveraged vault. So we haven't really talked about leveraged vaults yet, but what a leveraged vault is it allows you to borrow from Notional to execute a DeFi yield strategy that uses an external protocol, right? So it allows you to get leverage on a DeFi yield strategy that uses an external protocol, which is, I think, a pretty cool concept.
Yeah, that's
Um,
pretty important, given that that increases your potential gap between borrow cost and APR. And the bigger you can get that gap, the more powerful leverage is into the overall strategy. For example, if you take the Aura market, which protocols in the past have tried, that sits around a 6% APR, which is well above the base rETH APR. So any kind of vault strategy like this is definitely going to be beneficial. What are the starting vaults?
yeah, that's Jasper. That's exactly it. Yes. So basically, we're going to start with the starting vault strategy is going to allow you to borrow rETH from Notional and deposit that rETH into the rETH wrapped EETH balancer pool, and then stake those balancer LP tokens on Aura and harvest and reinvest the incentives. So a cool thing about leverage vaults is all that is automated. So it's a lot of steps, but Notional does the whole thing for you, right? So you just like decide on how much leverage you want to take, and then Notional automates that entire process and gives you the leveraged position. So this vault is, I think, going to be really interesting because in addition to the sort of yield that you get by borrowing on Notional and depositing in Aura, you're also getting eigenlayer points and EtherFi points. So I think your potential upside on this strategy is really big, right? Because like you're getting the eigenlayer points, who knows how much they're going to be worth. You're getting the exposure to the season 2 of the EtherFi airdrop. So you're getting like a really big cherry on top, in addition to the leverage deal that you're just getting from the vanilla strategy, which is really cool.
I really like this balancer pool. When I think about it, it gives me like a barbell vibe. Been popular on crypto Twitter for a little while, the barbell theory. In that our ETH on the left hand is arguably the most stable and decentralized LST, very consistent APR, somewhat lower, but very secure. And then wrapped E, the EtherFi restaking token, is very on the edge, cutting edge of risk with huge potential upside. Uh, and so this as an LP token is very attractive in a risk adjusted sense. And then you can add the leverage on top of it with fixed interest rates. It sounds like a killer product.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it, man. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't think I have much else to say. I think you said it perfectly.
So tell me about the process of getting Notional to mainnet. Have the audits gone well? And what's left to do?
Yeah, so the audits have all gone well. We actually, we finished the audit process. Um, I would I would like to say in the summer of last year. So Notional V3 on mainnet is the same code base as what we have running on Arbitrum. So we finished the audits in the summer of last year, and then deployed Notional V3 on Arbitrum in, I believe, October or November. And we've had that running, since then. So, there's been no real problems. And we've kind of worked out. It's actually been really nice because like Arbitrum has kind of been a testing ground in some sense, where we've been able to work out a lot of the bugs on the UI. So we had some issues in the beginning when we got it live on Arbitrum, but now I think all those issues have basically been worked out. So the UI works really well, and the code is solid, and it's been running with no issues for several months. And so everything's ready for Notional V3 on mainnet. I mean, really, to be honest, the primary like work that had to be done in terms of launching Notional V3 is really just managing the kind of wind down of Notional V2. That's been kind of the thing that's taken the most time. But like Notional V3 itself, it's the same code we have running on Arbitrum. So we just change the network and deploy it on mainnet.
Yeah, very cool. Having Arbitrum as this testing ground with the STIP incentives is like ideal situation. I feel like. Uh, I have a question coming in from the Discord, from user Ken. Ken is asking, why would one prefer using Notional on mainnet over on Arbitrum, where the fees are far cheaper?
That's a good question. And I would say so. There's I think two answers. So first of all, um, the reason you might use Notional on mainnet versus Arbitrum is just because you have your assets on mainnet, and for whatever reason, you don't want to put them on Arbitrum. And which to me sounds like strange, but also I think what you see empirically is that uh, there's just a lot more capital on Ethereum, and even though the fees are lower or on L2s, people are really hesitant to bridge their funds. Um, and so I think, you know, uh, one of the reasons you'd use Notional on mainnet is just because that's where your funds are and you don't want to bridge, right? It's basically as simple as that. Um, And then there's also, I would say, a second reason, which is that there is a greater availability of strategies on mainnet, or at least there's a different set of strategies on mainnet than there is on Arbitrum, right? So this rETH wrapped EETH pool for Ether5 points, that's on mainnet and it's not on Arbitrum, right? So if you want access to that strategy, you have to use mainnet, right? Now that can change over time. I think they probably intend to facilitate liquidity on Arbitrum as well. But at least for now, if you want access to these liquid restaking token strategies and levered points and all that stuff, you basically have to use mainnet.
Yeah, lots of pretty interesting draws of being on mainnet. I think you hit them pretty well there. Uh, One that I want to add is uh, Ethereum has all the Lindy for large players. Uh, Institutions that I personally talked to, they would laugh at the idea of going to L2 right now. They People with minimum deposit sizes of 6 to 7 figures, they care a ton about risk and stability, and also about having other large players involved. I remember talking to this one fund about getting them to invest in an REIT strategy, and one of their requirements was that they could never exceed I some number between 25 and 33% of the pool's TVL. It introduces
Mm-hmm.
systemic risk to them.
Yep, yep, absolutely. I think that's a good point. So I think what you see is I think there are some users that are kind of that are in multiple places, right? So some people like have some funds on Ethereum and some funds on Arbitrum, and I think that's actually true of a lot of users. But I think there's definitely like a set of users on Ethereum who, like you said, are just very like they're just much more sophisticated, I would say. And are more sort of rigorous around kind of some of these risk uh, decisions, right? And so for them, they take bridge risk very seriously, and they're just more comfortable staying on ETH-L1. So it's like it's an interesting thing, right? Because you see that on Arbitrum, it's a very like retail crowd, and not in a I think the term retail is often like used in a bad way, or like uh, to to talk about people that aren't crypto native. Like that's not really what I'm saying. I'm saying it's like it's not big institutions and big funds.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But those guys are definitely there, and yes, they very much prefer ETH-L1 to L2.
Sweet. So, we should be expecting Notional on March 25th, is that right?
Yep, that's right. So we're going to launch on Monday, and immediately at launch, we're going to have these incentives turned on. So we're going to have the first two strategies will be available, right? So that's providing your RETH liquidity to earn incentives, and then also being able to lever that up. That'll be available day one. Then the sort of the leverage vaults where we get kind of more spicy, and we're farming on Aura, and like you're getting the all the different points and all that stuff. That will be coming shortly after, but it's not going to be there on day one. We're thinking, first week or second week.
Got it, got it. One more point that just came to mind on the benefits of a fixed lending system for these riskier LP strategies. It just came to me that there used to be a different lending protocol. I think we talked about this in Denver, uh, that accepted LP tokens and did leverage liquidity strategies. However, they fell victim to an Oracle attack that essentially
Interesting.
drained their. Say again?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
uh,
recall which protocol exactly that. I think because I feel like that's happened. Oh,
it's
maybe
been
was
a
that
few
like
times.
sentiment? Maybe.
I can't recall offhand, but, point being, with a fixed interest rate, there are just less opportunities for oracle manipulation when the market goes out of whack. Uh, and yeah, I'm just overall very excited to explore leverage liquidity on Notional.
Cool. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I just like one last thing on fixed rates. I think it's really interesting. So a pattern we've seen is that when people first start to use the leverage strategies on Notional, like 95% of the time they borrow variable. But then the longer they're on Notional and they like stay there, they start to move into the fixed rate. And so you see like, initially users come on and they use the variable rate leverage. And I suppose that's what they're most familiar and comfortable with. But then over time, it's like they try out the fixed rate and you actually see like a pretty significant like movement from variable rate debt to fixed rate debt, which I think is actually is really interesting. It's like it's sort of like uh, people figuring it out as they go. I don't know.
Right, right.
I find that an interesting thing to see. Yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly the less familiar option, and so DeFi users will take some time to getting used to it, and so I can definitely see how that trend plays out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, any closing comments on Notional for the community? Anything we should be paying attention to, and where can we follow you guys?
Yeah, so you should follow us on Twitter. The project is at Notional Finance, and then you can also follow me if you want. My Twitter handle is at Teddy Woodward. That's just my first name and last name. Yeah, and then just in general, like we've talked a lot about the rETH opportunities. I think there's going to be a lot more as we go on. I think what I'm really excited about here is we've spent years, working on V3 and like doing all the stuff that we needed to do to make to make Notional a really usable product. And I am excited for being able to kind of pivot to growth and being able to do new things much more quickly than we have in the past. And I think that there's going to be a lot of exciting stuff to come in the weeks and months after we get live.
It's been a long journey of building, and I'm excited to see you guys take on the growth phase.
All
Thank you.
right, all right. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us here in the Discord, and I look forward to chatting and collaborating with you guys in the future.
Okay. All right. Thanks a
Cheers,
lot,
everyone.
everybody.